Hi, I'm Joseph Murphy, and welcome to Alien Brain Fog, a science-based podcast focused on memory, identity, and the systems of oppression that affect both. How do you know who you really are? On our first episode, we're going to deal with an important question. How can you tell if you've lost your f***ing mind? It's an ontological crisis.
I don't even see color.
Are aliens real?
Here's the agenda for today's podcast and what we'll learn. Is everyone crazy right now? Am I a crazy person? What is mental health? Is it a personal or societal problem? We're then going to look at different ways to determine if something is true. We're going to look at the difference between science and magic. And unlike Bill Nye, I do believe in magic. And I'll end with my hypothesis. I have a theory. I think I understand why everyone's lost their f***ing mind. And I'm going to tell you why. Is it just me, or does everyone seem a little crazy right now? Everywhere I look, I see the same expression on people's faces. It's a look of shock and anger. Like no one can believe what's really happening right now. For the last 4 years, it's been one thing after another. There's COVID, quarantine, George Floyd's murder, uprisings, unprecedented inflation and income inequality. A lot of people seem to think the world is ending, and a few people seem to hope it does. The government announced aliens are real, and no one cares. Like no one cares because for many of us, we're stuck in survival mode. Like, it's taking all of our resources just to get through the day. We don't have the calories for aliens. More and more angry young men, largely white, are focusing their rage on innocent people, largely not white. Now, some people are taking extraordinary risks, like going into an experimental submarine. Other people are looking for the Loch Ness Monster. Are we all crazy? Trump talks about shooting his political rivals, and it's just a normal news cycle. And there are many people who think I am a complete fucking nutbar. How do you know who you are? Are you the person your parents think you are? That's not just a question for children. I know grown men in their 50s who are still living their lives for their parents, even if their parents are dead. Now, are you the person your neighbors think you are? How would they describe you? Your friends, your coworkers? Do they get to decide who you are? Is identity locked into our genetics or our birth records, or is it something that only you can decide? First, I'll tell you who I think I am. My name is Joseph Murphy. I'm Canadian, like the other Joe. For most of my life, I've been in Windsor, Ontario, which is just across the river from Detroit, home of Motown and the Nain Rouge. Now, Windsor calls itself the City of Roses. Stephen Colbert famously called it the location of Earth's rectum. Which one of us is right? Now, despite its size, Windsor has given birth to greatness. Shania Twain, Oliver Platt, Colm Feore, Katie Findlay, Alexander Zonchek, the Tea Party, Tamia, former Prime Minister Paul Martin, and current NDP leader Jagmeet Singh grew up in Windsor. Now, for better or worse, Windsor is part of who I am. I've held many day jobs. I was a banker. I worked as a manager for a local utility company. I taught accounting. And I was a caseworker at social services. Is that who I am? I'm also a writer. I've published 6 books so far. I was a partner in a small publishing company, designed book covers. I'm currently directing a horror movie based off a script I wrote with my boyfriend. Is that who I am? So, do people think I'm crazy because I'm a writer? No. Well, the reason why people think that I'm a little crazy is See, when I was at work, I was being harassed because of the color of my skin, and I asked them to stop. And when they didn't stop, I filed a grievance. And that is apparently fucking crazy. So, what actually is mental health? And how can you tell if you are crazy? Full disclosure, I am not a neuroscientist or a therapist, but I can research. Writer. Now, here's what the World Health Organization says about mental health. Mental health is a state of well-being that enables people to cope with the stresses of their lives, realize their abilities, learn well, work well, and contribute to their community. So, based on that definition, how mentally healthy do you feel right now? Because if that's the definition of life, like being able to deal with the stresses of life, maybe we are all a little crazy right now. But is that a personal problem? Meaning something that you personally have to fix? Or is mental health a societal, systemic problem? Maybe increased rates of anxiety and depression are a warning sign. Maybe we're not supposed to learn to live with it. Maybe when everyone starts going a little bit crazy, it means we're supposed to change something about society. Maybe that. The definitions of insanity change over time. Let's look at a few. Drapetomania. Now, this was a term invented by a random white dude who tried to convince society that slaves who wanted to run away to freedom were mentally ill. Now, random white dude, I'm not saying his name on purpose. For him, black people benefited from racism. Sound familiar? And any slave who tried to escape must be crazy. Now, the uncomfortable urge to run away, that was a symptom of a mental disorder. And the remedy was amputation of the toes and a severe beating. Here's another form of insanity, once proven by science: hysteria. Now, hysteria was essentially anything happening with a woman's body that a doctor couldn't explain. Now, it could be a swollen abdomen, chest pains, fever, increased emotion, increased sex drive, decreased sex drive, loss of appetite, increase of appetite. Now, the remedies for this mental health illness of hysteria was massage of the pelvic area to induce orgasm. Science. Other remedies included putting leeches on the abdomen and marriage. Because science. In both cases, science advanced. These theories were proven wrong because that's how science works. With new evidence, you change your theories. We know racism is real. This is such fucking style. I can't believe I have to say this. And we know that women are not crazy for acknowledging that they have physical, autonomous bodies. Now, there's another group of people that used to be called crazy just for existing. I'm one of them. Once upon a time, I would be considered insane for saying I have a boyfriend. I could be jailed for sharing a bed with him, lose my job, be committed to a mental institution. All of that was supported by science. So, when did we stop calling homosexuality a sin? Sorry, slip of the tongue. A mental disorder. That depends on where you live. In America, it was 1974. Technically. In Canada, it wasn't changed though until 1982. One last group of people who are considered insane just for existing. Another group of people I happen to belong to. See, there's another reason people might call me crazy. There is a non-zero chance that I am capable of remote viewing and have been in contact with non-human intelligence for the majority of my life. I have several memories that don't make sense. They don't agree with our shared reality. They should be impossible. But they happened, I think. And I didn't tell anyone because I was afraid no one would believe me. Only crazy people see aliens because everyone knows aliens aren't real. So if you're experiencing it, there must be something wrong with you. It's not like the government has been lying to us for years. If aliens were real, they would tell us, right? After realizing my experiences were consistent with other people's encounters, I put it at the back of my mind. I thought that there was a possibility that I'd been visited when I was younger. But real or not, that time in my life was over. And I saw what happened to Whitley Strieber. He was one of the greatest horror writers of a generation. And when he talked about his experiences, they mocked him. They made fun of his trauma. And many people who've come forward with their own experiences have suffered far worse than Whitley did. I experienced things, but I wasn't going to speak up about them because I knew that speaking up about aliens could destroy my life, so I stayed silent. Now, let's talk about racism. When you look at me, what do you see? Do you see a white man or a black man? The answer may determine how you treat me. My mother was black, my father was white, is white. No one mistook me for a white man until I shaved my head. Now, to some, I am considered racially ambiguous, meaning they don't know how to classify me. When I walk into a room, people have to decide if I'm white or I'm black, and I can tell what decision they have made because the way they see me changes the way they treat me. Now, I've always known that racism was real intellectually. I mean, I grew up in Windsor. It's a very important location for the Underground Railroad. Martin Luther King was here a few times. But until I worked for the province of Ontario, I never suspected that systemic racism still existed. I believed the government propaganda that black people were free. I believed the government propaganda that black people would be treated equally under the law, when we can all see reality that is not true. But I believed it until I was harassed at work. In an office with 3 managers, one was actively engaged in harassing black staff members. The other 2 watched. Now, when I discovered that the harassment was aimed at all black people and not just me, that's when I spoke up. Now, in Ontario, we have a law called Bill 168, focused on preventing workplace harassment. It is framed as a health and safety issue. It was passed in June 2010. The inspiration for the bill was, in part, Lori DuPont. Now, Lori DuPont was killed on November 12, 2005. She was harassed by a man who would eventually kill her. Now, evidence shows management was aware of the harassment, but took no steps. Workplace harassment is illegal in Ontario. I was being harassed by the province of Ontario, the same agency telling other organizations that they weren't allowed to harass workers. Hypocrisy. When I filed with the harassment board, my reports were altered after I signed them. Elements of racism were removed from my reports. I had to talk to all the witnesses. I was told that there was no one inside the province that was there to represent me dealing with racism, but I could hire a lawyer if I wanted to. I wanted someone to respond to racist emails, and they were telling me that I should just get a lawyer. All of this was done in writing. Some of it was done on camera. All of it can be confirmed with a Freedom of Information request. Now, I brought my concerns about a cover-up to senior management. For doing so, I was fired. Being fired from a good job in this economy, for speaking out about racism, it broke my mind. It left me suicidal. I lost my mind first. I lost my mind, then I lost my job, and then I lost my house. But the person who was harassing me, as far as I can tell, is still completely employed. It's almost like she is being protected. Do I share anything else in common with Lori DuPont aside from harassment? Location. Lori worked at Windsor Hospital. I worked at Ontario Disability. It's less than a 5-minute walk. from my place to where she worked. The system has had 10 years to change, and it has not changed because the system does not want to change. The system has no intention of changing. Here's how the province of Ontario classifies harassment. Keep in mind, this is the organization I worked for, the province of Ontario. Businesses in Ontario have to follow these rules, even though the province is not following their own rules. I experienced what I believed to be harassment, so I took steps. I spoke to the other two managers. No corrective action was taken. No investigation. I spoke with the regional manager, Melissa Kersey. She showed remorse that I was experiencing racism, but no corrective action was taken. I spoke with Melissa's manager, Patty Redmond. I emailed the head of the Workplace Harassment Board, the head of the Civil Service, Michelle DiManuel. I emailed her many times. I emailed the union. No one was willing to help me. Let's talk about something light for a while, playing games. What is game theory? What is a game? According to Scientific American, a game is any activity with a set of rules and strategies for winning. All players know the rules and agree to follow them. Strategies are ways to turn random events to your advantage, and if you know the rules and strategies, you can make predictions on various outcomes and make informed choices about future moves. For example, hundreds of books have been written about chess. To play the game, you have to know the rules, and you learn the strategies over time. Chess, like drag, is not a contact sport. Normally, the person with the best strategy wins. I love games. I play an MMO called Elder Scrolls Online. My main is a Nightblade tank. When I'm not running dungeons, I play this mini game called Tales of Tribute. It's a card game. But I learned something this week that makes it not as much fun to play. I noticed that it didn't seem to matter what I did. The decision whether I was going to win or lose was decided before I started playing, just the way they do randomization. Now the system ensured that each time I drew a card, it was meh, but each time my opponent drew one, it was amazing. No matter what cards I chose or how I laid them down, didn't matter. The system had decided I wasn't going to win. Now eventually the randomness ended and I was able to win again, but by then the illusion was gone. I realized it wasn't my skill advancing me, it was the system. It was just my turn to win. Now if ESO wanted me to win, I won, and if it wanted me to lose, I lost, and my individual actions had nothing to do with it. Now, let's talk about racism. When it appeared that the agency investigating harassment, the WDHB, was suppressing reports, I reached up as high as possible. I emailed Michelle DiManuel, the head of the Civil Service, repeatedly. I told Emmanuel that I had uncovered government officials suppressing evidence and altering reports. I told her that the public had a right to know that there was a problem within the public service, and I wanted it to come from them. And that was the first time they tried to fire me. So how did they fool me? Well, they took advantage of my disability. It's another reason people might think I'm a nut bar is I have long COVID. I have lived with long COVID since January of 2021. After the first attempt to fire me failed, they waited until I had a mental health crisis in November of 2022. I was forced to watch a video I found offensive, while the manager who had been harassing me smiled. Now this happened on the day I had to put my cat down. Sneakers was going on 20, and he was my best friend, so I snapped. And when I say snapped, here's what I mean. I sent an email. I sent an email to Patty Redmond's replacement saying enough is enough. I asked how many more people are going to be traumatized before something changes. Now her response was dismissive. I went to Facebook and complained. I had been talking about racism at work for months on Facebook. Management and union were aware. They told me my actions were being monitored and that I would be told if I said anything inappropriate. I was promised that I would not be fired without cause or without warning. I was fired without cause and without warning, despite the promises. Now, I caught their promises on tape. Some of you have seen them. At the time, I believed them. I can see now that I was just incredibly naive. But I can kind of blame some of that on the brain fog. The union stopped responding to my emails. Friends from work started ignoring me, including my closest work friend, Aaron, who happened to be the local president. Aaron had seen every piece of evidence about harassment, had been in meetings where it happened, and it was because of Aaron's encouragement that I continued with the grievance process. If it wasn't for Aaron's encouragement, I probably would not have gone forward. Now, once the grievance actually started, though, Aaron stopped returning my texts and phone calls, and I haven't heard from her since December of 2022. I then reached out to several agencies, external agencies. I emailed every member of provincial parliament in Ontario. I emailed news agencies, local and national. I reached out specifically to Lisa Gretzky because I had campaigned for the NDP in the last election, knocking on doors for Gemma Gray Hall. I also trusted Lisa because she was the officiant at my wedding to my ex-husband. We haven't spoken for years, but I was impressed with Lisa's passion long before she entered politics. And I cheered when she was elected. She does have a passion for many things. The safety of black workers is just not one of them. I reached out to CBC, CTV, the Windsor Star, AM 800. No response. I reached out to the Labor Relations Board, and the forms to file with them are mind-numbingly difficult. Difficult to find and challenging to complete. Like, I was up against the union's lawyers and the employer's lawyers. Now, I use ChatGPT to help find precedents because, again, I'm not a lawyer. And I learned that the term failure to represent was coined because unions have a history of not protecting black employees. I wish I'd known that sooner. I also found several precedents of systemic racism within my own organization. Several filings that were already on record with the Labor Relations Board, exactly the kind of deferential treatment I was experiencing, an experience the employer and the union made me feel was unique to me. Now, does the province care about black workers? Lots of reports were done. Consultant, but no actionable change has happened. The province is doing nothing to protect black workers. The system only protects the abusers. If they haven't done it by now, they're not going to do it. They just want us to believe that they're going to. They want us to ignore our own experiences and focus on the paper reality, illusion that they show to the public. But things are way worse inside the province than any private company I have ever worked for. No news agency would help me. No politician would help me. No one inside the company would help me. Like, it's almost like no matter what I did, for reporting harassment, I was going to lose the game. Because the system decided I wasn't supposed to win. Now, my only strategy at this point is to stop playing the game. It's the one reason I'm doing the podcast. I'm not going to spend the next 5 years of my life in a court case. I'm going to focus on education. I believe I have a civic duty to make sure what happened to me does not happen to another person. So for the next couple of weeks, I'll be focused on systemic racism, and I'm going to show you what happened to me so that it doesn't happen to you. But I got other things I got to focus on, because if aliens are real, I got some work to do. It's important to me to send out a warning. If you have brown skin and work for the province of Ontario, you are not safe. It is not a safe space. If you feel like you are being harassed because of the color of your skin, leave. Do not report it, because the system is set up to repress your report. It is set up to fire you for speaking out. So just leave. Or maybe I'm just a crazy person. Maybe because of COVID, I've misinterpreted all the emails and the meetings and the precedents. Maybe. So how can you tell if something is real or not? Now, that is the main reason why I'm doing this podcast, because we as a society have lost the ability to tell truth from fiction. Over the next couple of weeks, I'm going to explain to you how you can tell the difference between truth and fiction. Now, I made you a promise. I told you I have a theory about what's happening. I think there's a reason why everyone is acting a little crazy right now. And I believe it's because we're going through an ontological crisis. Every person on earth right now is going through an ontological crisis. And most of us don't know about it because we have no idea what an ontological crisis is. So, what is an ontological crisis? Join me next time on Alien Brain Fog when I explain what an ontological crisis is, how you can tell if you're in one, and how to get out of one. Thanks for joining me. Be kind. The world's kind of messed up right now.